Maria Thompson was the kind of person you'd pass on the street and never think twice about. She wasn't flashy or loud, just a hard-working, dependable woman trying to make ends meet in the bustling city of Los Angeles. Her days were filled with routine. Wake up early, pack her son Liam's lunch, drop him off at school, and then head to work at First National Bank, where she had been employed for nearly 6 years. At 34 years old, Maria carried herself with quiet strength. Life hadn't always been easy for her. After separating from Liam's father when their son was just a baby, she became both mom and dad to the little boy who now meant everything to her. Despite the challenges, Maria found joy in simple things: a warm cup of coffee in the morning, hearing Liam laugh during playtime, or even the satisfaction of balancing accounts at the end of a long day at the bank. That particular Thursday began like any other. Maria woke up before sunrise, tiptoeing around her small apartment so as not to disturb Liam. She brewed her favorite dark roast coffee, its rich aroma filling the kitchen. As the sun peeked over the horizon, casting soft golden light through the curtains, she sat at the table sipping her drink while going over her mental checklist for the day. Liam's science project is due tomorrow, she murmured to herself, jotting down a reminder on a sticky note. And I need to finish that report for Mr. Harris by noon. After getting ready, Maria woke Liam gently, brushing his unruly brown hair out of his sleepy eyes. Time to get up, champ, she said with a smile, handing him his favorite cereal bowl. Liam groaned but eventually perked up after devouring his breakfast and chatting excitedly about his upcoming soccer game. Once Liam was safely dropped off at school, Maria drove to the bank. The familiar hum of fluorescent lights greeted her as she stepped inside, exchanging greetings with coworkers. The morning passed quickly, answering customer queries, processing deposits, and helping elderly clients navigate their accounts. By lunchtime, Maria felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing she'd made someone's day easier. But as the afternoon wore on, something felt off. Maybe it was the unusually slow stream of customers, or the way the clouds outside seemed to gather, ominously, casting shadows across the room. Whatever it was, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that today might be different. When closing time finally arrived, Maria tidied her desk and locked away important documents. Saying goodbye to her colleagues, she grabbed her purse and headed toward the exit. Outside, the air was cooler than expected, sending a slight shiver down her spine. She tightened her grip on her bag and started walking toward her car, which was parked 2 blocks away in a dimly lit lot. The streets were eerily quiet. Most people had already retreated indoors, leaving only a few scattered pedestrians hurrying along the sidewalks. Maria quickened her pace, her heels clicking against the pavement. She glanced at her phone briefly, checking the time, when she noticed a figure approaching from the corner of her eye. At first, she thought nothing of it. People often use this route as a shortcut. But as the footsteps grew closer, louder, faster, unease settled deep in her chest. Something wasn't right. Her heart began to race and she instinctively clutched her purse tighter, wishing she'd chosen a busier path home. Suddenly, the figure broke into a run. Before Maria could react, a gloved hand reached out, grabbing her arm and yanking her backward. Panic surged through her veins as she realized what was happening. This wasn't just some random passerby, it was an attack, and she was completely alone. Screaming for help, Maria struggled against her assailant, but he was stronger, pulling her purse free and knocking her to the ground. Pain shot through her knees as they hit the concrete, but all she could focus on was the terror gripping her heart. "Please," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Take whatever you want, just don't hurt me." Time seemed to slow, as Maria lay there helpless and exposed, waiting for the worst to happen. But then, out of nowhere, a commanding voice cut through the chaos. It was deep, authoritative, and utterly unexpected. "Hey!" the voice barked, startling both Maria and her attacker. Turning her head slightly, Maria saw a man standing a few feet away. He was tall, muscular, and unmistakably familiar. Could it really be? Before she could process what was happening, the stranger sprang into action, moving with surprising speed and precision. In that moment, Maria didn't know whether to feel relief or disbelief. All she knew was that her nightmare might finally be coming to an end, and that her unlikely savior was none other than Vin Diesel. As Maria lay on the cold, hard pavement, her mind struggled to process what was happening. The weight of the situation pressed down on her like a suffocating blanket. Her attacker's grip tightened around her purse, and she felt herself being yanked backward with brutal force. Her knees scraped against the rough concrete as she fell, sending sharp jolts of pain shooting through her legs. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. But even through the haze of fear, one thing was clear. She was completely at this stranger's mercy. "Please," Maria begged, her voice trembling. "Take whatever you want. Just don't hurt me." She tried to pull away, clawing at the ground in a desperate attempt to escape, but her efforts were futile. The mugger was stronger, his movements deliberate and calculated. With one final tug, he wrenched the purse from her grasp and began rummaging through it, tossing items onto the ground. A lipstick tube, a crumpled receipt, her wallet. Maria's heart sank as she realized how vulnerable she was. There was no one around to help her, no passerby to intervene. It felt like the world had abandoned her. But then, something extraordinary happened. A deep, commanding voice sliced through the tension-filled air. "Hey!" it barked, loud and authoritative. The sound was so unexpected, so out of place in the eerie stillness of the street that both Maria and her attacker froze. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. Maria turned her head slightly, squinting through her tears to see who had spoken. Standing a few feet away was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably familiar. His presence radiated strength and confidence, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made him impossible to ignore. Could it really be Vin Diesel? Maria blinked, convinced her panicked mind was playing tricks on her. After all, why would someone as famous as Vin Diesel be walking down this quiet, unremarkable street? But as the figure stepped closer, there was no mistaking him. It was Vin Diesel. The same chiseled jawline, the same muscular build, the same commanding aura she'd seen countless times on movie screens. Except now he wasn't performing stunts or delivering lines. He was here, in real life, stepping into her nightmare like some kind of guardian angel. For a split second, the mugger hesitated. He glanced up from rifling through Maria's belongings, clearly startled by the sudden appearance of the imposing stranger. His masked face betrayed a flicker of uncertainty, as though he couldn't quite believe his bad luck. Who attacks someone, only to have a Hollywood action star show up moments later? But desperation quickly overrode his fear. Clutching the stolen wallet tightly, the mugger snarled and took a step back, preparing to flee. Diesel didn't give him the chance. With the grace and precision of someone who had spent years perfecting fight choreography, Diesel sprang into action. He moved swiftly, closing the distance between them in mere seconds. The mugger lunged forward, brandishing a small knife he must have pulled from his pocket. For most people, seeing a weapon like that would have been enough to send them running in the opposite direction. But not Diesel. If anything, the sight of the blade seemed to fuel his determination. The two men collided in a flurry of motion. Diesel sidestepped the mugger's clumsy swipe with ease, his reflexes honed by years of training. Without missing a beat, he delivered a powerful kick that sent the knife skittering across the pavement, far out of reach. The mugger stumbled backward, momentarily off balance, but he recovered quickly. Enraged, he threw a wild punch aimed at Diesel's face. Diesel blocked it effortlessly, countering with a swift jab that landed squarely on the mugger's jaw. The impact was audible, a sharp crack that echoed through the empty street. Maria watched in stunned silence, her breath caught in her throat. Everything about the scene felt surreal, like something straight out of one of Diesel's blockbuster films. But this wasn't scripted or rehearsed. It was raw, chaotic, and terrifyingly real. Each blow exchanged between the two men sent a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through Maria's veins. She wanted to look away, to shield her eyes from the violence unfolding before her, but she couldn't tear her gaze from the spectacle. Within moments, it was over. The mugger collapsed to his knees, clutching his stomach and gasping for air. Diesel stood above him, breathing heavily but otherwise unshaken. His expression was calm but firm, exuding a quiet authority that left no room for defiance. "Stay down," he said simply, his voice low and steady. The mugger obeyed without protest, too winded and frightened to put up any further resistance. Only then did Diesel turn his attention to Maria. Kneeling beside her, he extended a hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone softening. Up close, Maria could see the genuine concern etched into his features. This wasn't just an actor playing a role. It was a human being offering comfort and reassurance in a moment of sheer terror. Maria nodded weakly, though her body still trembled uncontrollably. I think so," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She accepted Diesel's hand, allowing him to help her to her feet. As she stood, she winced at the sharp pain in her knees, which were scraped and bleeding. Diesel noticed immediately and frowned. "We need to get you cleaned up," he said firmly, "and we should call the police." Before Maria could respond, Diesel retrieved her scattered belongings from the ground, carefully gathering each item and placing it back into her purse. Then, pulling out his phone, he dialed 911. While waiting for the authorities to arrive, he stayed by Maria's side. Speaking softly to keep her calm, he asked about her injuries, assured her that everything would be all right, and even cracked a gentle joke to lighten the mood. "You're lucky I was in the neighborhood," he said with a small smile, his trademark charm shining through despite the gravity of the situation. "Guess you could say I'm your personal action hero tonight." Maria let out a shaky laugh, though tears still glistened in her eyes. For the first time since the attack began, she felt a glimmer of hope. The nightmare wasn't over yet, not entirely, but having someone like Vin Diesel by her side made the ordeal feel a little less overwhelming. And as the distant wail of sirens grew louder, signaling the arrival of help, Maria allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would turn out okay after all. As the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, Maria found herself leaning heavily on Vin Diesel, not physically, but emotionally. His presence was like a shield, protecting her from the chaos that had unfolded just moments ago. Though she was still trembling, his calm demeanor and steady voice helped ground her in reality. He didn't treat her like a victim. Instead, he spoke to her as though she were a friend, someone worthy of care and respect. "You're safe now," Diesel reassured her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The police will take care of everything." His words carried a weight of authority, yet they were delivered with such warmth that Maria couldn't help but feel a small sense of relief wash over her. For the first time since the attack began, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, letting the tension in her chest ease ever so slightly. When the flashing lights of the patrol cars illuminated the street, Diesel flagged down the officers, waving them over with an urgent motion. The sight of law enforcement arriving brought a wave of conflicting emotions for Maria. Relief that help had come, but also anxiety about what would happen next. Would she have to relive the terrifying ordeal by recounting every detail? Would the mugger try to deny his actions or blame her somehow? Her mind raced with questions, each one amplifying her unease. Diesel seemed to sense her apprehension. Without hesitation, he stepped forward to speak with the officers, ensuring Maria wouldn't have to face the situation alone. As he recounted the events leading up to the altercation, the officers listened intently, their expressions shifting between disbelief and admiration. It wasn't every day they encountered a celebrity stepping in to stop a crime, and doing so with such precision and bravery. "Mr. Diesel, thank you for your assistance," one of the officers said, clearly starstruck. "We'll handle things from here." Diesel nodded but didn't leave immediately. Instead, he turned back to Maria, crouching down to meet her at eye level. "Do you want me to stay while you give your statement?" he asked softly. There was no trace of ego or self-importance in his tone, just genuine concern. Maria hesitated for a moment, unsure whether she wanted to involve him further. After all, this wasn't his responsibility, and he'd already done more than anyone could reasonably expect. But before she could respond, one of the officers approached her gently. "Ma'am, "Can you tell us what happened?" he asked, his voice kind and reassuring. Maria glanced at Diesel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, she began to recount the harrowing experience. The footsteps behind her, the sudden attack, the fear that gripped her when she realized she was powerless to stop it. Each word felt like pulling shards of glass from her heart, but having Diesel nearby made the process bearable. While Maria spoke, Diesel kept a watchful eye on the mugger, who was now handcuffed and sitting slumped against the side of a patrol car. The man's earlier bravado had completely evaporated, replaced by a defeated slump. Occasionally, Diesel exchanged a few words with the officers, providing additional details about how he'd intervened. His account matched Maria's perfectly, leaving no room for doubt about the mugger's guilt. Once Maria finished her statement, the officers assured her that they would do everything possible to ensure justice was served. They collected evidence from the scene, including the discarded knife and scattered items from her purse, before escorting the mugger into the back seat of the squad car. As the vehicle drove away, its red and blue lights fading into the distance, Maria finally felt a flicker of closure. The nightmare was over, or at least this chapter of it was. Diesel lingered for a moment longer, watching as the commotion subsided. When he turned back to Maria, his expression softened. "Are you okay to get home?" he asked. "I can call you a cab if you'd like." Maria shook her head, though her gratitude was evident. "Thank you, but my car is parked just a couple of blocks away," she replied. "I think I'll be fine now." Diesel frowned slightly, clearly unconvinced. "It's late, and after everything that's happened, I don't think it's a good idea for you to drive yourself home," he said firmly. "Let me take you, it's the least I can do." Maria hesitated again, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to accepting help, especially not from someone like Vin Diesel, a global superstar whose very name commanded attention wherever he went. Yet there was something disarmingly sincere about him, a humility that made him seem less like a Hollywood icon and more like a regular person who genuinely cared. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "If you're sure, I'm sure," Diesel replied with a reassuring smile. "Come on, let's get you home." The short walk to his car was quiet, save for the occasional hum of passing traffic. Maria limped slightly, her knees still throbbing from the fall, but Diesel walked beside her at a slow pace matching her rhythm. Every so often he glanced at her, checking to see if she needed support. When they reached his sleek black SUV, he opened the passenger door for her, waiting patiently as she climbed inside. Once she was settled, he closed the door gently and walked around to the driver's side. As they pulled away from the curb, Maria stared out the window, watching the city blur past. The adrenaline that had surged through her veins during the attack was beginning to wear off, leaving her exhausted and overwhelmed. Her hands still trembled slightly, and she clasped them together in her lap to steady them. Diesel noticed, but didn't say anything, giving her space to process everything that had happened. Instead, he focused on making the ride as comfortable as possible. He adjusted the temperature controls, asking if she preferred warmer air, and turned on soft music to fill the silence. The playlist was surprisingly mellow, acoustic guitar melodies and soothing vocals that seemed worlds apart from the high-octane soundtracks of his movies. Maria appreciated the gesture, finding comfort in the calming atmosphere. After a few minutes, Diesel broke the silence. "You're incredibly brave, you know that?" he said, glancing at her briefly before returning, his focus to the road. "Not everyone would have handled that situation with as much composure as you did." Maria blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "I don't feel brave," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was terrified. I thought something terrible was going to happen." "It's okay to feel scared," Diesel replied. "Being afraid doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. What matters is that you didn't give up, even when things felt hopeless. That takes real courage." His words resonated deeply with Maria, touching a part of her she hadn't realized needed healing. For years, she'd prided herself on being strong for Liam, on keeping her struggles hidden behind a mask of resilience. But tonight, she'd been forced to confront her vulnerabilities, and in doing so, She'd discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. "Thank you," she said finally, turning to look at him. "For everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." Diesel smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm just glad I was there," he said simply. People shouldn't have to go through things like that alone. They continued talking as they drove, the conversation flowing naturally despite their vastly different lives. Maria learned that Diesel had been in the area filming scenes for an upcoming movie. He shared stories about life on set, describing the challenges and joys of bringing characters to life. In turn, Maria opened up about her own life, her job at the bank, her love for Liam, and the sacrifices she'd made to provide for him. Diesel listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, and offering words of encouragement. By the time they arrived at Maria's apartment building, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The evening's events had left her shaken, but Diesel's kindness and support had reminded her of the goodness that existed in the world. As she unbuckled her seatbelt and prepared to step out of the car, Diesel handed her a business card. "If you ever need anything," he said earnestly, "don't hesitate to call. People shouldn't have to face tough times alone. You've got someone in your corner now." Maria accepted the card, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in hours, she felt ready to face it. With a final thank you and a heartfelt goodbye, she stepped out of the car and watched as Diesel drove away, his taillights disappearing into the night. As she entered her quiet apartment, Maria couldn't help but marvel at the strange, serendipitous chain of events that had unfolded. What had started as an ordinary day had transformed into something extraordinary, and she knew she would never forget the man who had stepped in to change her life forever. When Maria stepped into her modest apartment, the familiar creak of the door closing behind her felt like a small act of reclaiming control. The night's chaos had left her feeling untethered, but now, surrounded by the comforting sights and smells of home, she began to feel grounded again. Her son Liam was staying over at a friend's house for a sleepover, a rare treat that usually brought her joy, but tonight, it gave her a moment to process everything without worrying about explaining the ordeal to him. Maria set her purse down on the kitchen counter, wincing slightly as the motion jarred her sore knees. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly 10 p.m. The evening had stretched impossibly long, each moment packed with intensity. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders, yet her mind refused to quiet. Every time she closed her eyes, flashes of the attack replayed in vivid detail. The masked figure lunging toward her, the cold scrape of concrete against her skin, the sound of Vin Diesel's commanding voice cutting through the terror. It was overwhelming, but amidst the fear and confusion, one thought kept surfacing. He saved me. Vin Diesel wasn't just some distant celebrity whose face appeared on movie posters or magazine covers. Tonight he had been real, solid, present, and undeniably heroic. His actions weren't part of a script or staged for an audience. He had stepped in because it was the right thing to do, no matter how dangerous or inconvenient. That realization stirred something deep within Maria, a mix of gratitude and awe that she couldn't quite put into words. As she moved through her apartment, tidying up absent-mindedly, Maria noticed his business card resting on the dining table, where she'd placed it moments earlier. Picking it up, she ran her thumb over the embossed letters spelling out his name. It seemed surreal to hold such a simple object, a piece of paper connecting her to someone who lived in an entirely different world. Yet there it was, tangible proof that this encounter had truly happened. She sat down on the couch, staring at the card as if it might reveal some hidden meaning. Diesel's offer to stay in touch hadn't felt like an empty gesture. There was sincerity in his voice when he said, "People shouldn't have to face tough times alone." Those words lingered, in her mind, resonating far beyond the context of the attack. They spoke to something universal, a reminder that even in our darkest moments we are not meant to carry burdens by ourselves. But what could she possibly say to him? Maria wondered. She wasn't used to asking for help, let alone from someone so famous. Her life revolved around routine and responsibility, not red carpets or blockbuster premieres. Still, she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her chest whenever she thought about his kindness. Maybe reaching out wouldn't hurt. Maybe it would be okay to accept support, even if it came from an unexpected source. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft glow of her phone screen lighting up the room. A text notification blinked across the display. Curious, she picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. "Just checking in to make sure you're doing all right. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Benign." Maria stared at the message, her heart skipping a beat. Of all the things she expected after tonight, hearing directly from Vin Diesel wasn't one of them. The message was brief but thoughtful, written in a tone that mirrored the calm reassurance he'd shown earlier. She hesitated for a moment, unsure how to respond. What do you say to someone who has literally saved your life? Finally, she typed out a reply. "Thank you so much for everything tonight. I'm safe at home now, though still processing everything. Your kindness means more than I can express." Almost instantly, her phone buzzed with another response. "Glad to hear you're safe. Take all the time you need to process. It's a lot to go through. And remember, my offer stands. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." Reading his words, Maria felt a lump rise in her throat. It wasn't just the content of the message that touched her. It was the effort, the genuine desire to ensure she was okay. In a world where fame often created distance between people, Diesel was bridging that gap with authenticity and care. The exchange ended there, but its impact stayed with Maria long after she set her phone aside. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to relax, sinking deeper into the cushions of her couch. Her body ached, her mind buzzed with exhaustion, but beneath it all, a flicker of hope began to grow. This night had shaken her to her core, but it had also reminded her of something important: humanity. Even in the most unlikely places, compassion existed, and sometimes it came wrapped in the form of a Hollywood star. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm golden beams across Maria's living room. She woke, up groggily, her body stiff from the previous night's ordeal. After showering and dressing, she prepared breakfast for Liam, who bounded into the kitchen full of energy after his sleepover. As she listened to him chatter excitedly about video games and snacks, Maria marveled at how normal everything felt. Life went on, even after moments of chaos. Yet, the events of the night before lingered in her thoughts. Over coffee, she found herself scrolling through news articles online, curious to see if anyone else had witnessed the incident. Sure enough, local media outlets had picked up the story, describing it as a dramatic confrontation involving none other than Vin Diesel. Headlines like "Action Star Saves Woman from Mugger" and "Real-Life Heroics, Vin Diesel Steps In" dominated social media feeds. Comment sections erupted with praise, fans hailing him as both a cinematic legend and a real-world champion. Maria smiled faintly as she read the reports, amused by the way reporters framed the event. It struck her as ironic that something so personal to her was now public fodder for headlines. But rather than feeling exposed, she felt grateful. If sharing her story inspired others to believe in the goodness of strangers, or encouraged victims of crime to seek support, then perhaps her experience served a greater purpose. Later that afternoon, Maria decided to visit a nearby pharmacy to pick up bandages and antiseptic for her scraped knees. As she walked through the store aisles, she couldn't help but notice the stares. At first she assumed they were directed at someone else. After all, why would anyone recognize her? But then a woman approached hesitantly, clutching a tabloid featuring Vin Diesel's photo on the cover. "Excuse me," the woman said softly. "Are you the lady from last night?" Maria froze, taken aback by the question. Yes," she replied cautiously. "Why?" The woman's face lit up with admiration. "I just wanted to say thank you," she explained, "for being brave enough to share your story. My daughter was mugged a few years ago and she never talked about it. Hearing what happened to you and how Mr. Diesel helped, it gives me hope that people can still look out for each other." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as the woman hugged her briefly before walking away. In that moment, she realized the ripple effect of kindness. Diesel's intervention hadn't just saved her. It had sparked conversations, connections, and reminders of resilience among strangers. That evening, Maria received another text from Diesel. "How's your day going? Hope those knees are feeling better." She chuckled, shaking her head at his thoughtfulness. Replying, she wrote, "Days, been good, thanks for asking. Knees are holding up. Also, people keep recognizing me from the news. Kind of surreal." His response came quickly. "Welcome to my world. Seriously though, take care of yourself. You're stronger than you think." Maria smiled, saving the conversation to revisit later. As she tucked her phone away, she reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. Just 2 days ago, she had been an ordinary bank teller, navigating the challenges of single motherhood. Now, she was connected to a global icon who genuinely cared about her well-being. It wasn't fame or fortune that made Maria feel changed. It was the reminder that acts of kindness, big or small, had the power to transform lives. And maybe, just maybe, she could pay that forward in her own way. In the days that followed, Maria found herself reflecting deeply on the events of that fateful night. The attack had shaken her to her core, but it also revealed something unexpected, a profound sense of connection. Vin Diesel's intervention wasn't just about stopping a crime. It was about reminding her that humanity still thrived in the most unlikely moments. As she went about her routine, dropping Liam off at school, balancing accounts at the bank, and tucking him into bed each evening, she couldn't help but feel as though her perspective had shifted. The bruises on her knees were healing, but the emotional scars would take longer to fade. Nightmares occasionally jolted her awake, leaving her heart racing and palms sweaty. Yet every time fear threatened to creep back in, she remembered Diesel's calm presence and reassuring words. He hadn't simply walked away after calling the police or driving her home. He'd stayed engaged, checking in on her regularly through texts and calls. His messages weren't intrusive. They were thoughtful reminders that she wasn't alone. One morning, while sipping coffee and scrolling through social media, Maria stumbled upon a post from a local community center. They were hosting a workshop titled, "Empowering Women, Building Strength and Confidence." Intrigued, she clicked on the link to learn more. The program promised self-defense classes, financial literacy sessions, and mental health support. Groups, all aimed at helping women navigate challenges with resilience. Something about the description resonated deeply with her. Maria hesitated at first. She wasn't used to stepping outside her comfort zone, especially when it came to activities that drew attention to herself. But then she thought about Diesel's encouragement. "Take care of yourself, you're stronger than you think." Those words echoed in her mind, urging her to take action. That afternoon, she signed up for the self-defense class, hoping it might give her a renewed sense of control over her life. On the first day of the course, Maria arrived early, clutching a water bottle and wearing workout clothes that felt unfamiliar after years of dressing for office jobs. The instructor, a wiry woman named Carla, greeted everyone warmly before launching into an introduction. "This isn't just about learning how to fight," Carla explained. "It's about understanding your power and trusting yourself to make decisions that keep you safe." As Maria listened, she realized this wasn't just about physical strength. It was about reclaiming agency. Each punch, block, and kick taught in the session symbolized more than technique. It represented defiance against fear. By the end of the hour, Maria's muscles burned, but so did a spark of determination she hadn't felt in years. Over time, Maria began attending other workshops offered by the community center. One particularly impactful session focused on teaching women how to manage finances effectively, empowering them to achieve independence. Maria, who already worked at a bank, found herself sharing tips with participants and answering questions about budgeting and saving strategies. Her contributions earned smiles and nods of appreciation, making her realize she had valuable knowledge to offer others. Word spread quickly among the attendees about Maria's expertise, and soon the organizers invited her to lead a financial literacy seminar herself. At first, she balked at the idea. Public speaking wasn't exactly her forte, and she worried about being judged or misunderstood. But Diesel's voice once again played in her head. People shouldn't have to face tough times alone. If she could use her skills to help, even one person avoid the struggles she'd faced, wouldn't it be worth it? With newfound resolve, Maria agreed to teach the seminar. She spent hours preparing slideshows, gathering resources, and practicing her delivery. When the big day arrived, she stood nervously in front of a small group of women, all eager to learn. As she began speaking, her nerves melted away. Sharing stories about her own experiences, both successes and failures, created a bond with her audience. By the end of the session, several participants approached her to express their gratitude. "I never knew managing money could feel so manageable," one young mother said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for showing me I can do this." Hearing those words filled Maria with pride and purpose. For so long she'd seen herself as ordinary, a single mom trying to get by. But now she understood that her efforts mattered. Every lesson she shared, every moment of encouragement she extended, contributed to someone else's journey toward empowerment. Meanwhile, Vin Diesel continued to check in periodically, his texts becoming a steady source of support. One evening, he sent a message asking how things were going. Maria replied honestly, telling him about the workshops and her growing confidence. To her surprise, Diesel responded enthusiastically. "That's amazing. Keep shining your light, it's inspiring. To hear how you're turning a tough situation into something positive. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do to support your work." His words buoyed her spirits, reinforcing the idea that kindness begets kindness. Inspired by his generosity, Maria decided to organize a charity event at the community center. The goal was simple: raise funds to expand programs for underserved women and children in the neighborhood. She pitched the idea to the organizers, who loved it immediately. Together, they brainstormed ways to attract donors and volunteers, creating flyers and posting announcements online. When Diesel learned about the fundraiser, he didn't hesitate to offer his assistance. "I'll spread the word," he promised via text. True to his word, he posted about the event on his social media platforms, encouraging fans to contribute. Within hours, donations poured in from across the country, along with messages of support for Maria and the community center. Local businesses donated goods and services, and volunteers signed up to help with logistics. On the day of the event, Maria stood backstage, watching as people streamed into the venue. The turnout exceeded her wildest expectations. Families, friends, and strangers mingled together, united by a shared desire to uplift others. A live band played upbeat music. Children laughed as they participated in arts and crafts stations, and tables laden with baked goods and handmade crafts buzzed with activity. When it was time for Maria to speak, she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding. Looking out at the sea of faces, she spotted Vin Diesel sitting near the front row, smiling warmly. His presence grounded her, reminding her why she was doing this. Taking a deep breath, she began her speech. "None of us are meant to face life's challenges alone," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Sometimes we need a helping hand or even a superhero to remind us of our strength. I'm standing here today because someone believed in me when I doubted myself. Now I want to pay that forward by supporting others who deserve the same chance." The crowd erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the room. As Maria stepped off the stage, Diesel approached her, clapping enthusiastically. "You nailed it," he said, pulling her into a friendly hug. "This is what real heroism looks like. Not fighting bad guys on screen, but lifting each other up in real life." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she hugged him back. In that moment, she realized the true impact of their connection. It wasn't just about fame or fortune. It was about using whatever platform you had to create meaningful change. And together, they were proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond their own. By the end of the evening, the fundraiser had raised enough money to double the size of the community center's programs. Women who had once felt invisible now saw themselves reflected in stories of resilience and hope. Children who lacked access to educational resources gained opportunities they'd never dreamed possible. And Maria, once an ordinary bank teller, navigating life's challenges, discovered a new identity as a leader, advocate, and force for good. As she drove home that night, exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she no longer feared it. With Diesel's friendship and the unwavering support of her community, she knew she could face anything. After all, life wasn't defined by the moments that broke you. It was shaped by the people who helped you rebuild.